It's great to see so many of you come into this workshop, because sometimes when it's the mental health workshop, you know, people have a tendency to maybe exit and go to something else, so it's great to see so many of you in. Again, some of you met me earlier. I'm Christine Fitzgerald, and this is my colleague John Farron. And John and myself are going to go through with you what we have seen as actual benefits and ways of supporting a person with a mental health problem in the workplace. And not just in the workplace, folks, in your ordinary everyday life. Because I think we talked about earlier on, you know, we work, but you know, it's part of our life. And a lot of what we do at work we carry into home, and a lot of what we do in our personal lives we carry into work. So there was just a slide that I didn't tip on there earlier on, folks. And again, as I explained to you, my slides are all over the place. But it was just that reasons that sometimes people don't disclose they have a mental health problem in the workplace. And this was a survey done in the UK. 2/3 of UK workers would not feel comfortable disclosing a mental health issue with their employer because of the following. 35 said that their employer would think negatively of them. 32 feel that there's a stigma attached to mental health issues. 32 would be embarrassed. 32% would be embarrassed. 32% don't think they will get the right support from their employer. And 23% feel it would impact on their chances of progression. So that's how people felt. That's not necessarily the truth of the matter, because there are some very, very supportive workplaces, and I know that, and some of you, I hope, are involved in places where, you know, people are supported. Again, I can't emphasise enough, and I suppose it's from my own experience, folks, that I was able to continue with my job and do it quite successfully when I was feeling in that bad place in my own personal life over 30 years ago. And to say as well that the majority of people that do encounter a mental health problem, everybody suffers from stress. If that stress isn't addressed, it can escalate into what can become a mental health problem. But if it's addressed in the early stages, it may not escalate into that. But unfortunately, 1 in 4 of us need to go for professional help for a mental health problem. But out of that 1 in 4, a large, in fact the majority of the people will get back on their feet again and go on and live very successful, productive, healthy lives if they get the right kind of support. There's very few people, if they don't get the right kind of support, will not come through this, because a mental health problem is the same as a physical health problem. It can and does go away, but unlike a physical health problem, you know, if I get a chest infection in the morning, I know that I will be okay once I get the antibiotics and the whatever else. I know that in a few weeks, 2 weeks, I will be fine. But we need to allow for more time when it comes to a mental health problem. And that's what we have to be prepared to do, to be supportive over a longer period of time. So folks, we're just looking here at recognising the signs of declining mental health. So you may say, Jesus, I wouldn't have a clue what's going on there, or I wouldn't know the signs. We're all bright, intelligent people. And if we know somebody, or if we work beside somebody every day, or even somebody in our own personal life, the key word is change. If something changes in that person that is out of the ordinary or out of their normal behaviour, it is something to be checked out. So, you know, changes in behaviour, changes in mood, emotional changes, like person maybe is angry, withdrawn, tearful, lacking in interest, change in appearance, lateness coming to work, Maybe they're beginning to isolate themselves, avoiding interacting, and the lunch breaks, negative talk, change in work performance. And I'm sure if I went around the room, all of you or some of you would add to that list. There are things that you have seen. You know, the level of where the person might be at, we might be sure. The level of maybe their stress or depression or anxiety, we may not be sure about that. But I would say to you that the key word is change. If you see a change in a colleague, if you see a change in a friend, it's time to act. Because, you know, if there isn't a change, we're fine. We're not going to be... I remember I'm an assist trainer, and it's one of the things I will be suggesting to you later on. And John is an assist trainer. Both John and myself trained in assist. Anyone know what assist is? Okay, some of you do. It's Applied Suicide Interventions Skills Training. So it's ASIST. It is a 2-day course run by the HSE to train you, and it doesn't matter what work you do, it doesn't matter what back you can come for personal reasons, professional reasons, but it provides you with a 2-day training course to offer first aid to somebody at risk of suicide, right? And I was just reminded there when I was talking that I had a participant on a recent course, and he does, on the Cliffs of Moher, right? They do the patrols because there has been a lot of suicides in that particular area. And, you know, he's one of these people that thinks that everybody's out for a walk on the Cliffs of Moher is about to kill themselves. He's got that kind of, you know, obsessed about it. And if a person's having an off day, that doesn't mean they're suffering from depression. If a person has a real reason, maybe a colleague has been recently bereaved or a relationship is broken down or something, and they're feeling a bit pissed off at the time for a few days or a few weeks, you know, that doesn't mean they have a mental health problem. But if you see this change that's going on persistently and ongoing, and it's going on for a while, it's time to check it out. And as I said, I'm sure you could add a lot more to that list there than we have up there. So, John, you might want to maybe say a few words there, just about some of the do's and don'ts.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, I suppose the first thing, if you see somebody, that change that Christine spoke about there earlier, I suppose the important thing is to, as Christine mentioned this morning in her own talk, I think this is nearly dead, so you probably have to depend on my voice. To ask the person, how do you feel? Are you okay? As the person asked Christine this morning. Now remember, an ongoing change. We could all have a bad day. We've all bad times during the day, and things might be going well. But that, I'll be back. Suppose I leave this one.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has gone a little bit dead. Yeah, we all have kind of a bad day, but it's when it's ongoing, as Christine mentioned. To ask the person, are you okay? Now, if the person says, yes, I am, that's fine. You can't make somebody say something or answer a particular way. But if the person says it, but you also, by asking that question, you could be the key to open that door for that person. You could be the key they were waiting on, just for someone to listen. And I think that's very important. To listen, not to be judgmental, not to come back with immediate response. Oh, if you did it, or if you did it such a way or did such a thing, everything will be all right. That might be the way you see it. It may not be what that particular person is looking for. So not to come back with an immediate answer. And we're all inclined to do it. We're inclined to say, maybe if you did such a thing or such a thing, that'll help you. I think the first and most important thing is to listen to the person. That may be what they're just looking for. someone to listen. Now, you can listen in a few ways. We can be sort of half there listening. And if somebody is in a bad space, they want you to listen to what they have to say. Not to come in and out immediately, just with ready-made answers. Not to play around with our phones. I actually knew somebody who was in a bad place, went to a professional person to just chat to them that things weren't going well. And the person was playing with their phone while this person was talking to them. And the person got up, they told me this themselves, they got up and they said, I think probably you need help more than I do. They weren't one bit interested. It's important to be interested. It's important to listen, but I mean really listen to what the person has to say. So there's some do's and don'ts there. Okay. Non-judgmental, not to sort of judge. Not to judge. Not to say, well now, there may be consequences or whatever. Not to judge. To listen carefully. To let the person talk without being judgmental. Now, offering advice. As I say, the first thing I would do would be to let the person talk. I'd be a little bit cautious about maybe giving advice for that first session. Maybe that can come if somebody trusts you, because that's important. Am I really at home? I can talk to this person, really feel they're listening to me without, as I say, judging me. So maybe not to come up with immediate sort of answers. Sometimes it's good to, if you can let the person buy in themselves to the solution, and people will. Just let them buy into it. Because if somebody buys into something, they're more inclined to maybe go with that sort of thing than we just giving our ready-made answer to them. Because every one of us are different. Every one of us deal with things in a different way. So maybe just, listen to the person. Maybe come up with a few ideas, but let them buy into it. Don't just close it off. Well, this is what I want you to do. Let the person buy into it themselves. And if we buy into something, as I say, we're more inclined to go with it. Don't criticise or compare, with somebody else. As I say, we are all different. We all have different ways of dealing with things. Each one of us, our story is unique to us. So don't just come up, as I say, criticise or compare with somebody else. That doesn't work, as I say, for any of us really. We are all different. We all have different needs. We all have different responsibilities. We all have different ways of doing things. So not to compare. The other thing I would say is don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Don't sort of, say, this person, because they've said this, will not be able to do their job. They'll certainly not be able to hold down that job. That's an assumption we're making. As Christine said, with a little bit of help, a little bit of support, yes, they can do that job. Maybe with a little bit of our support, being in management, to, say, look, maybe for the time being, just keep in contact with me. Just let me know how it's going to show that you are concerned. But don't let us make assumptions that this person may not be able to do that particular job. To give them the chance to do it with a bit of support, a bit of encouragement. Because by maybe assuming that that person, as I say, isn't able to do it, we could cause them further problems, couldn't we? Here's somebody else now not putting that trust in me. Here's somebody else putting me down. And that can cause people, to have worse problems. They go away and they say, they're not even listening to me, and they're not even, trying in some way to support me. So that's what I would say. Don't make assumptions. Don't criticise. The important thing is listen and try and get the person maybe to buy into the solution. Obviously, you have to look after your own organisation as well. That's important. The work has got to be done. But there may be ways around that will suit both parties. Okay?
Okay, and I think John is really correct there in saying, help with a plan. But the plan has to be the person's plan. Because for some people who are in a place of mental unhealth, they can feel very disempowered. So I'm a terrible woman for making plans for, somebody comes in to me and they tell me something. Should you sign a plan made for them in 5 minutes? But it's not their plan. So I think including the person in the plan, how do you think you can get through this with our help? Just basic language like that, folks. What can I do to help you get through this? Is there anything I can offer you to help you out of this? And let the person make the plan, because it can be very empowering then for them. And to make the plan for them can be disempowering, and they're feeling disempowered enough when they're in that shitty place called depression or anxiety. So in as much as you can, empower them. It's very rare that you would have to take a decision out of somebody's hands. And there are 3 areas where you would not be able to keep confidentiality, and you would have to take it somewhere else. And that is if the person is at risk to themselves or another person, if a minor is at risk, or if the person was involved in serious crime. Other than that, you can work with the person and empower them. And, again, never make light of it, folks. A lot of us, I've lived in a family where, sure, pull up your socks, aren't you grand? You'll be grand in a week. And, making light of it. I remember my oldest sister introducing me one time as her sister that had a nervous breakdown. That was 20 odd years ago when you stop it. So again, now, whether she was making light of it or what, I don't know, but it wasn't very funny to me. I ate the face off her afterwards. But again, this is very serious, no matter how small. A person might say to you, look, my dog died and I am heartbroken. You might say, for God's sake, what's she talking about? Her dog is dead. We'll get over it. But for that person, that's a very painful place to be. So I would encourage you, never make light of it, folks, because for the person that's going through that, it is very serious for them. So,
and one of the things I think that really, when people come to our groups, one of the things that really gets on their nerves is when somebody says to them, pull yourself together. That's the worst thing you can say to somebody. That's not what they want to hear at that particular time, I can assure you. They want you to listen, encourage, support, and, meet them halfway along the road anyway, so that they can deal with what's going on, but also keep working as well.
The greatest gift we give to each other, in my opinion, as human beings, is time. And we talked back in the other bigger room earlier on about none of us have enough time. We are doing today 40 things more than, or 20 things more than we were doing 40 years ago. On a daily basis, we're doing 20 things more than we were doing 40 years ago. And one of the guys, Joe, I think, talked about, the guy from Leah talked about, all the WhatsApp groups and all the social media and all the, oh my God, you'd just be going around like that if you were to try and keep up with it all. The greatest gift we give to each other is time. You may not have the answers. You may not know what to do, but at least you have given that person time, and John mentioned it earlier on. You could be the first person that person has confided in. So you could be opening up a door for that person to move forward with their lives and just to listen. Okay, so supporting your colleague, and that leads us into listening. The greatest gift you can give to a person. And that's simple. Are you okay? You don't have to be a counsellor or a mental health professional to ask a person, are you okay? You only have to be a human being. And the greatest tool that you have to work with in an intervention with somebody who is suffering from a mental health problem is your own self as a human being, and to reach out to support somebody else that's in pain, to empathise, to reassure. You know, we may not know what's going to happen in the future. And on the last slide, we said about making promises you can't keep. Don't do that. But we can reassure that, look, if you do get help, it will get a little bit better. How much better, we don't know right then. But the fact that they're talking to you, to ease the burden where possible. You know, if there's something practical that can be done for that person, that maybe we can do it. Maybe we can help with it. We can acknowledge the hurt that that person might be going through. You know, it might be a bereavement, breakup of a relationship, it might be an illness, it might be they're just suffering from depression. And some people, I would argue with it, for me, I think there's always a reason behind why somebody goes into this place. You know, I don't think it's just like, you know, you wake up on a Monday morning and you went to bed on Sunday night fine, you wake up on a Monday morning you have the flu. I don't think anybody wakes up on a Monday morning and has a nervous breakdown for no reason. I do believe that life circumstances or something that has went on, whether it was in the recent past or the past, or it's something that's going on in the present, has brought them to this place. But I don't think anybody just wakes up on a Monday morning and has a nervous breakdown for no reason. So, you know, again, that person is in a place of hurt, so we try and understand what that hurt is about. Learn to understand their triggers, what's making it worse, and maybe lend a little bit of support with that. And if it's any of the things that we talked about in relation to work, like allowing the person maybe to come in a little bit later, maybe work from home one day, allow them time for appointments, etc., that we can understand and support them with the triggers that might be causing them. The alternative is they're out of work sick. So if we can support them in work, we, number one, empower them, and number two, we keep them in work, which can be really, really helpful at a time like that. Because one of the worst things for a person in that place, particularly if they don't have a great family network or support, isolation. And isolation is a killer. There's no question about that. The more isolated a person becomes, it can lead to, you know, all sorts of really negative things, including suicide. Give them space. You know, when they tell you and they need a breather and they say, okay, I've told you, I need time to digest this, allow them that space, keep their dignity, and anticipate and handle responses to change. Because you mightn't always hear back from that person what you think you might hear. You know, you could ask a person, are you okay? And I've often said it. For me, and I've worked in this area for 30-ish years, person could tell you, feck off and mind your own business. Now, if that's the worst thing that happens to me in any given day, I can live with that, because I get told that a couple of times a day, you know, versus not asking, and that person is in serious trouble. So I would say to you, take your courage in your hands and ask, because the worst thing that could happen to you is that you say, oh, mind your own business, I'm fine, how dare you? And then 2 days later, that very same person could come back and say to you, you know what, thank you for noticing, I'm not so hot at the moment. So again, anticipate and handle those changes. So John, do you want to say a few words about supporting the returning to work? And it's there in front of you, John, if you, rather than strain in your neck there.
Okay. The first thing there we have is when the person comes back to work after being out, I suppose also important to make them welcome, but not to make them stand out either, you know. Just you heard Christine give an example this morning of the person just said to her, you know, how are you, Christine, when you come back? So just an ordinary human welcome back. Now, it is important, I think, sometimes that, as I say, sometimes people may have, getting back to work, they may have to adjust a little bit. So they may not be able to go back on, you know, the full hours just immediately. So I suppose to be open to that, to discuss it with the person, and the sort of, obviously you have to get your work done within the organisation. But sometimes just adjusting hours, maybe somebody come back a couple of days a week, come back on a part-time basis, maybe mornings or afternoons, that type of adjustment, being open to that type of adjustment with somebody, adjusting tasks. Now, I think you have to be careful doing this as well. I mentioned already that you don't make the person feel maybe worse, that they feel, oh, you're coming back and you're not able to do the job that's expected of me. So sometimes adjusting tasks, maybe somebody else giving them a little bit of a hand, or maybe just doing something different just for a while. Being open to that type of adjustment of hours and indeed of work practice. Providing time off to attend counselling. That again is important, that the people feel if they have to attend doctors or counsellors, which for a while they may have to be open to that, provided of course it's not being abused. I think that's important too, that it's not being abused. That it is done in consultation with the manager and in agreement with the manager and the person involved. I think the word agreement in all these is very, very important on both parties. Return to work phase, I've already mentioned that. Someone has been on sick leave to maybe phase them back. Again, as I say, in agreement with both management and with the person themselves. Keep the emotion and feelings of other staff in mind. Yeah, you have to look after the rest of your staff as well, not just the person with mental health problems. So, to keep the other people informed as well. Not maybe giving the full details of what's wrong with the person, but that the other people within the organisation buy into it. They say, oh, why is he or she getting this special treatment and I'm not, or I have to do that work, or whatever. And you hear that, of course. So it's a buy-in or agreement, I think, is the important word in all those slides. Agreement on both sides.
Okay, John, thank you. And the last one there, folks, that's a little bit down on the slide, and John addressed it anyway, that this is all to be done, in consultation with the with management. What's doable, because the work still has to go on, and the job still has to be done, folks. While we're trying to support this person, there's something going on behind the scenes where you still have to provide a service and so on. So in terms of signposting to other supports, folks, I would say to you as HR, as managers, or whatever your role is in your own job, know what's going on in your local areas. Know, maybe have a couple of numbers of counselling, support groups, recommendations of hobbies, education courses like understanding mental health, understanding anxiety, managing anxiety. We run a course in Grow, Managing Stress in the Workplace. And, have helplines. And then there are more formal training that staff can go on. Like I mentioned, Assist. There is a mental health first aid course beginning in the near future, run by the HSE and the Office of Suicide Prevention as well. And this is first aid for somebody with a mental health problem. There is a number, and these are running in communities, understanding anxiety and depression. And anything else you can think of yourself that I would say, I think it was Joe mentioned there earlier on, that having a wellbeing ambassador or a mental health first aider in your workplace could be very, very beneficial to you. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be trained. If you had this one designated person, or two if you could, they would be the go-to people for this, to support this. Everybody has to help. But you don't want 20 people supporting one person or they'd run out the door. If you had that well-being ambassador or that mental health first aider, it would be great. It really would be a step in the right direction for you. And creating an openness around mental well-being and reducing stigma. Any of you are capable of introducing into your workplace things like mindfulness when you're having training days, managing stress and anxiety. Some people say, how do we begin? Where do we begin with it? But you have a training day and you start off with a mindfulness session and maybe get that person who's doing the mindfulness session to talk about the benefits of it. Next time you're doing a training day, you might have somebody in to talk about, you know, how to manage stress. Every single person in the universe has stress. It's not a mental health problem. We all have stress. So, you know, getting those things in subtly, where we begin an open dialogue about how to mind your mental health. We do a course as well, a community education course on, you know, what's good mental health, what's bad mental health, what threatens our mental health. 3 key questions. They can all be introduced into a regular training day, because mental health is very important. It's equally important as our physical health. So folks, that's as much as we have to give you there. And just some of the, you know, be understanding and supportive, encourage the work-life balance, show gratitude and recognition for that person that might be struggling, and promote good diet, nutrition. All of these can be incorporated into training days.